Hi, I'm Hannah Carter, 27 years old. Before everything fell apart, I thought I had the perfect life planned out. I'm intelligent, careful about decisions, and I always thought I could read people well. I work in marketing, I love my friends fiercely, and I believed in my husband completely. What happened to me could happen to anyone. This is my story. My wedding dress felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I stood alone in the corner of the reception hall, watching the champagne glasses clink together, listening to my mother laugh with relatives I barely knew. Where was Marcus? My new husband had disappeared exactly 40 minutes after we said our vows. I kept telling myself he was handling something important, checking on the caterer, maybe greeting late guests. But deep down, something felt wrong. My phone buzzed again. His number went straight to voicemail for the 15th time. I smiled at a passing guest while my heart was pounding like crazy. His mother, Diana, swept past me in her designer dress. She glanced at me with a small, knowing smirk that lasted barely a second before she looked away. That smirk changed everything. It wasn't confused or worried like mine. It was satisfied, like she knew exactly where he was and why he wasn't here. I excused myself and found his business trip email on his phone, which he'd carelessly left charging in the hotel room. Something about it felt off, like a lie written in perfect grammar. The next morning, I called Marcus's hotel. They had no record of him checking in. I tried the airport, nothing. My hands were shaking as I called his best friend, David. He hesitated before saying Marcus had mentioned a meeting out of town but couldn't confirm details. His voice sounded strange, almost guilty. I felt sick. I drove to the airport myself, checking every departure board. My mind raced through terrible possibilities. What if something had happened to him? What if he was hurt? But then I remembered that smirk on Diana's face. That wasn't worry. That was a secret. I sat in my car in the airport parking garage and cried, not because I was sad, but because I was starting to feel like a fool. My best friend Jenna texted asking how the honeymoon was going. I couldn't answer her. I couldn't admit the truth yet. No one knew Marcus was missing. Everyone just thought we were off celebrating. I had to keep up the appearance while my new marriage was crumbling into nothing. I drove to Marcus's mother's house and demanded answers. Diana answered the door in her yoga outfit, not even pretending to be surprised. "Oh, Hannah," she said with a sigh. "You're being so dramatic. Men need space sometimes. You probably pushed him away with all your questions." Her words were casual, but they were weapons. I felt my confidence crack. Had I pushed him? Had I been too needy? She dismissed me like I was overreacting, like disappearing on your wedding day was normal. But I saw it clearly now. She wasn't worried about her son. She was protecting something. I left her house feeling angrier than sad. That afternoon, I found a charge on our joint credit card to a luxury hotel downtown. The receipt was signed and the signature wasn't Marcus's. It was a woman's handwriting. My stomach dropped. Everything I thought I knew shattered in that moment. Marcus hadn't disappeared. He'd chosen to disappear. And someone had signed into a hotel room as him. I started tracking everything Marcus had done. I reviewed his emails carefully, looking at timestamps and sender addresses. I found receipts for restaurants I'd never heard of, charged to his card, but dated when he told me he was working late. I scrolled through his social media posts going back months. There were geotagged photos at a downtown boutique from 3 weeks ago. I'd been with my mom that day, picking out wedding flowers. I felt like I was uncovering a secret life he'd been living right beside me. His social media showed him at coffee shops, galleries, and bars I'd never seen him mention. But the most telling thing was the pattern. Every Thursday night for the past 6 months, he had the same routine. Late meeting, phone on silent, home by 11, every single Thursday. Suddenly, all those nights when he said he couldn't hang out with my friends made sense. They weren't real meetings. They were planned time with someone else. I printed everything out and organized it in a folder. My hands were steady now, but my heart was breaking all over again. I called Jenna and asked her to meet me at our favorite coffee shop. I didn't want to talk about this over the phone. When she sat down across from me, I showed her the receipts, the hotel charge, the pattern of lies. Jenna's face went pale. "Hannah, this is serious," she said quietly. She was the one person I trusted completely, and I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. "We need to be strategic about this," Jenna said, leaning forward. "Don't confront him yet. Gather more information first. If he's doing something this deceptive, there might be more to it than just a woman." Her words planted a seed in me, a quiet determination to stop being a victim and start being smart. That's when I realized I had power I hadn't used yet. I could think clearly. I could plan. I could protect myself without being mean about it. We sat there for 3 hours, mapping out a careful strategy. By the time I left that coffee shop, I wasn't the humiliated bride anymore. I was someone who was going to take control. I followed Marcus one night. I know it sounds crazy, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. I followed his car from his office downtown to a small apartment building in a neighborhood I'd never mentioned to him. Through the lobby glass, I watched him carry flowers up the stairs. Flowers. He didn't even buy me flowers anymore. A woman answered the door, blonde, younger than me, wearing one of his shirts. They kissed, and he stepped inside. I sat in my car and watched the lights go on in the third-floor window. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe, but I didn't cry. Instead, I took photos of the building entrance with his car parked outside. I noted the address. I listened as he talked on the phone inside, his voice carrying through the thin walls to the parking lot. That's when I heard him say something that made my blood run cold. "We need to move the money before she figures it out." Move the money? What money? The next morning, I called our bank and went through our recent transactions. I felt dizzy reading the numbers. Over $50,000 had been transferred out of our joint account 3 days before our wedding. 3 days. While I was finalizing seating arrangements and getting my nails done, Marcus was stealing from me. From us. I sat down on the kitchen floor and let myself cry for exactly 5 minutes. Then I stopped. I remembered what my grandmother used to say. "Power isn't taken, honey. It's quietly earned." She'd been right about so many things. I wasn't going to scream or yell or confront him with tears. I was going to be smarter. That afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a different bank that Marcus knew nothing about. I started transferring my paychecks there instead of our joint account. I changed my passwords on everything: email, social media, online shopping. If he could play this game, so could I, but I was going to play it better because I had something he didn't: the truth. I started noticing patterns in how Diana communicated with the staff at family events. She'd give them looks, quiet instructions, knowing glances. When I asked questions, suddenly no one knew anything. She was running interference for Marcus, protecting his secrets, keeping the family narrative clean. At a family dinner, Diana announced that Marcus was taking some time for himself. Nobody questioned it. They just accepted it. I watched her work the room, controlling the story, making sure nobody looked too closely at what was happening. That's when I realized Diana had known all along. She hadn't been surprised when I confronted her. She'd been expecting me. I searched through old emails and found one from Marcus dated 8 months before our wedding. He'd written to someone, "I've been planning this transition carefully. Mother says timing is everything." Transition. He'd been planning to leave me before he even married me. Before he asked me to spend my life with him. The cruelty of that realization hit harder than the $50,000. I rented a small apartment under my maiden name. It was tiny, just 1 bedroom and a kitchen, but it was mine. I moved my important documents there, my grandmother's jewelry, my personal photos. I created a safe space away from Marcus, away from the lies. At work, I stayed focused and professional. No one knew anything was wrong. I attended meetings, reviewed campaigns, and smiled when I was supposed to smile. But every lunch break, I was researching lawyers and documenting evidence. I photographed every receipt, every email, every transaction. I created spreadsheets tracking his movements. I wasn't being obsessive, I was being prepared. A colleague named Sarah mentioned seeing Marcus at a boutique downtown with a woman carrying shopping bags. The boutique sold expensive jewelry and handbags. That woman wasn't me. That woman was getting gifts while I was being lied to. I thanked Sarah casually and made a note of it. Every piece of information was valuable. Every detail mattered. I opened my new bank account and started being strategic about money. I transferred the amounts carefully so they wouldn't trigger alerts. I began pulling together every document that proved my contribution to our household. Tax returns, receipts for household improvements I'd paid for, bills I'd covered. I was building a case without even knowing yet if I'd need one. I drafted a list of questions I needed answered. Where was the $50,000? Who was the woman? How long had this been going on? What was Diana's role? I kept this list in a locked notebook that I hid in my apartment. Marcus still thought I was the same naive girl he'd married. He had no idea that I was quietly reorganizing my entire life. Every day felt like I was moving chess pieces into position, getting ready for a game I hadn't signed up for but was determined to win. I contacted a former coworker of Marcus's named Tom, someone I hadn't talked to in years. I reached out casually on social media, saying I was thinking about his company and wanted to catch up. When we met for coffee, I was careful with my words. Tom eventually mentioned that Marcus's business ventures had always seemed sketchy. "The guy talks a big game, but I never saw real results," Tom said. "A lot of promises, not much delivery." He also mentioned that Marcus had tried to get him to invest in something called a property opportunity 2 years ago. Tom had passed. "Good thing, too," he said. "I heard later that people who invested lost everything." My hands were shaking as I listened. This wasn't just personal betrayal. This was possible fraud. I asked Tom if he'd be willing to talk to a lawyer if needed. He hesitated but agreed. That's when I realized Marcus's lies went much deeper than just the woman. He'd been deceiving people for years. I was careful one afternoon when I decided to follow Marcus again. This time, I wasn't being careless. I parked near his office and waited for him to leave. I followed him to a small cafe downtown, keeping distance between us. I pretended to look at my phone while sitting 2 tables away from him. That's when I almost got caught. He glanced up from his coffee and looked directly at me. My heart stopped. For a second, I thought he saw me. I quickly turned my face away and grabbed my phone, pretending I was on a call. He looked away. My entire body went weak with relief. I waited 5 minutes and then left quickly. But during those 5 minutes, I heard him on the phone with someone. He was saying, "I need a lawyer to handle a tricky marital matter. Can you recommend someone good?" My blood turned cold. He was already planning to protect himself legally. He was moving faster than I thought. I started carefully mentioning to mutual friends how concerned I was about Marcus. Not angry or vindictive, just concerned. I said things like, "I'm worried he's making some bad business decisions," or "I think he might be struggling with something." I positioned myself as the rational one, the caring one. People started confiding in me. One friend told me he'd seen Marcus at a restaurant with an older woman who wasn't Diana. Another friend mentioned Marcus asking for money for an investment. I collected these stories carefully, building a picture of someone untrustworthy. I wasn't spreading gossip. I was telling the truth in small, careful pieces. Diana started noticing that I was different. She called me one day and said, "Hannah, you seem so confident lately. That's nice." But it wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. She was realizing I wasn't broken anymore. She was realizing I was a threat. I found something that changed everything. In an old email account Marcus had shared with me to coordinate wedding details, I found a draft message to his lawyer about property transfer documents. The documents would make his mistress the owner of a condo, and they were designed to look like I'd agreed to it. The signature line had Hannah Carter already typed in, ready for a fake signature. My hands went numb. He wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to make it look like I'd approved his deception. He was trying to forge my name. I saved everything to a secure cloud account that only I could access. I also noticed something else. His mistress was planning to leave him. I found an email where she was asking her own lawyer about getting full ownership of the property and the money he promised. They were both using each other. They were both planning to betray someone. I saved those emails too. I was holding dynamite now, and I was smart enough to use it carefully. I arranged to meet Marcus at a coffee shop in broad daylight. This wasn't going to be a fight. This was going to be strategic. I sat across from him and calmly opened my laptop. I showed him the hotel receipt with the woman's signature. I showed him the credit card charges. I showed him the bank transfers. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just presented the evidence like a prosecutor in a courtroom. His face went white. He started stammering about how it wasn't what it looked like, how he could explain everything. I held up my hand. "I know about the property documents," I said quietly. "I know about your plan to forge my signature." He tried to gaslight me, saying I was imagining things, that I was being crazy and paranoid. But his voice was shaking. He knew I had him. I stood up, closed my laptop, and walked away. I didn't need him to admit anything. I needed him to know that I knew. And I needed him to know I wasn't the person he thought I was. After that confrontation, things started to shift. Mutual friends who'd been questioning me before began reaching out to me instead of Marcus. They wanted to know what was really going on. I told them the truth without being mean about it. I let the facts speak. One of Marcus's business associates, someone I'd met at a party, called me privately and said he suspected Marcus had misappropriated investor funds. "I've been worried about it for months," he admitted. I told him to document everything and keep records. I also told him about Tom, my contact who'd lost money on Marcus's promises. Slowly, a network of people who'd been deceived by Marcus started connecting. None of us were being vindictive. We were just protecting ourselves and each other. I realized I wasn't alone in this. Other people had seen through him too. They were just waiting for someone else to make the first move. I contacted a lawyer named Ms. Reeves and we went through everything carefully. She reviewed the documents, the emails, the bank records. "This is strong," she said, nodding as she read. "Very strong. The forged signature attempt alone is serious. Combined with the financial transfers, we have a solid case." We moved to freeze our joint accounts immediately, all of them. Marcus couldn't touch a single dollar. When he found out, he started calling me frantically. I didn't answer. He sent text messages begging me to unfreeze the accounts. Still no response from me. Ms. Reeves advised me to let her handle all communication. "He's panicking," she said. "That's good for us. Let him panic." For the first time, I felt like I had control. I wasn't running from the situation. I was leading it. I carefully positioned myself as the reasonable one in the eyes of our social circle. I didn't publicly humiliate Marcus or post angry things online. Instead, I just lived my life and let the truth come out naturally through conversations. When people asked what was happening, I answered honestly but calmly. "Marcus made some deceptive choices," I'd say simply. "I'm protecting myself and moving forward." My composure made people believe me. If I'd been screaming and crying, they might have dismissed me as the bitter ex. But because I was calm and factual, I was credible. Gossip started spreading on its own. People who Marcus had lied to began talking to each other. His credibility crumbled, not because I attacked him, but because the truth was allowed to breathe. Diana tried to intervene at one point, calling mutual friends and defending Marcus. But her defensive attitude just made people more suspicious. I didn't say a word. I just waited. Then I discovered the forged document attempt more clearly. Ms. Reeves's investigation found that Marcus had actually started the signature forgery process with a document company. The company had flagged it as suspicious and never completed it, but they had records. This was the piece that made everything concrete. This wasn't just infidelity or financial disagreement. This was fraud. This was a crime. When I showed this evidence to the mutual friends I'd been careful to talk to, their responses changed. People started distancing themselves from Marcus. They stopped inviting him to things. His business inquiries started getting rejected. He was becoming isolated, and it was all because of the truth. I wasn't spreading rumors. I was sharing facts with people who deserved to know what kind of person they were dealing with. Ms. Reeves arranged a mediation session with Marcus and his lawyer. We met in a neutral conference room, and I brought my documentation. I wasn't angry or emotional. I presented everything like I was giving a business presentation. Here are the facts. Here is what happened. Here is what needs to be corrected. My calm, organized presentation left no room for denial or debate. The mediator kept nodding, taking notes. Marcus's lawyer looked increasingly uncomfortable. "My client wants to explain his perspective," the lawyer said weakly. Marcus tried to claim the money transfers were gifts, that the property situation was a misunderstanding, that the woman was just a friend. But his lies were so obvious now that they sounded pathetic. Everyone in that room could see through him. In that same mediation session, I turned my attention to Diana. "Your son attempted to forge my signature on legal documents," I said calmly. "I have evidence that you knew about his relationship with another woman before we were even married. Your knowing smirk the night of my wedding was confirmation of that knowledge. You protected his deception. You ran interference with our family. You convinced people not to tell me the truth." Diana's face went pale. She hadn't expected me to call her out directly, to connect the dots between her actions and the consequences. The mediator looked at her seriously. "Is that accurate, Mrs. Chen?" Diana couldn't deny it. I had evidence. I had timelines. I had the trail of her complicity written in emails and phone records. She'd been caught, and she knew it. Her power over me was gone forever because I'd refused to let her control the narrative. The legal process took months, but the outcome was clear. Marcus was ordered to repay every penny of the $50,000 he'd stolen, plus interest. The property with his mistress's name was examined and found to be partially funded with money from his business investors. The misappropriation case I'd helped Tom and the other's build resulted in investigations into his business practices. Marcus faced lawsuits from multiple people. Diana's reputation in our social circle was damaged. She tried to be the puppet master, but the strings had gotten tangled. I watched it all happen from a distance, staying calm and focused. I'd won, but not in the way I'd expected. I didn't win by fighting dirty. I won by being smarter, more organized, and more honest. Justice felt different than I thought it would. It felt clean. It felt right. It felt earned. I moved fully into my apartment, officially filing for divorce. For the first time since my wedding day, I decorated a space for myself. I painted the walls soft blue, bought new furniture that I chose, not compromised over. I hung photos of my friends and family who actually showed up for me. My lawyer called one day with news. A settlement had been reached. All the money was being returned to me, plus damages. Marcus had agreed to pay. More importantly, the forged document attempt meant legal consequences for him beyond just civil court. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was free, not just from the marriage, but from the fear that came with it. I was no longer waiting for the other shoe to drop. The shoe had dropped, and I'd caught it. I had dinner with Jenna, my grandmother's best friend, and some other close friends who'd supported me. We didn't talk about Marcus or Diana. We talked about my future, about the marketing campaign I was launching at work, about a trip we were planning together. For the first time, I felt like myself again, better than myself. I was stronger now. I knew what I was capable of. I knew I could handle deception and come out on top. A few days later, I received an anonymous note slipped under my apartment door. It just said, "You are unstoppable." I still don't know who sent it, but I smiled when I read it, because I'd proven it to myself. 6 months later, I saw Marcus at a store downtown. He looked smaller somehow, worn down. He tried to approach me, started to say something. I just nodded politely and walked past him. I didn't need anything from him. No apologies, no explanations, no friendship. I just needed him to understand that I was going to be fine without him. Better than fine. That night, I sat in my apartment with a cup of tea, looking at the city lights. I thought about how my wedding day had ended with me standing alone in a beautiful dress, humiliated and confused. Now I was standing alone in simple clothes, empowered and clear. The loneliness had transformed into independence. The confusion had transformed into clarity. The humiliation had transformed into victory. I'd learned that betrayal doesn't have to break you. Sometimes, it just teaches you how strong you already were. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes, it's just living well, building something better, and refusing to let someone else's lies become your truth.